Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Pastor Ruth here to teach another awesome lesson about the Bible. We're still in our Old Testament section, and I think it's really exciting to read through these stories and kind of see how they apply to us today. Thank you for everyone who reached out last week. You may have noticed there was no video. I was not doing well. I was sick. I spent my Valentine's Day in bed, blowing my nose and coughing up a lung, and I just figured it was better to not be here at church and get everyone else sick. And so I stayed home. Thank you to the parents who rolled with the punches, and I'm feeling much better. I am cleared to be back. Thankfully, I did not have COVID, but I am ready to go. My symptoms are gone, and I am super excited to dive into the story today. So most of the time in movies and shows, they start with the main character, right? Typically, some of the first scenes are with the main character, the person that we're going to be following throughout the movie. Well, today's story is about a boy named Samuel, but actually we're going to start the story before he was even born. We're going to start with his mother, Hannah. And so his mother, Hannah, had really been wanting children. Her husband would have to leave yearly, and she didn't have any kids. She was really lonely. And so one day at this special thing called a feast with the priests, and this is what they did back then, she was at this feast, and she was just praying to the Lord, and she was sobbing bitterly. And a priest actually noticed her, and he went up to her, and his name was Eli. So he went up to Hannah, and because it was a strange sight. He's like, why are you crying and so upset at what is supposed to be, a joyous thing? And so she said, I've been praying to God for so long. I just want a child. And so Hannah, she had actually prayed to God, and she told God, if you give me a child, I'll give him back to you. And Eli was just so moved, and he prayed for her too. And wouldn't you know it, eventually Hannah did have a child. And that child is Samuel, who's our main character. So after several years of raising Samuel, and when he's ready, she takes him back to the priest Eli, back to the tabernacle, and says, when I prayed, I told God that if he gave me a child, that I would give this child back to him. And so, this child is a gift from God. And so I'm going to give this child to you so that he could be a blessing to you and to the tabernacle, and he can spend his life chasing after God and doing what his will. And so I think that's a really cool background story. It's a really cool origin story because Samuel was a gift from God. Hannah didn't have any children. And a cool little fact from this story is that Eli actually prayed again for Hannah, and he blessed Hannah, and he prayed that she would have even more children, not just Samuel, but so that she wouldn't be alone either. And she actually did end up having several more children, which I think is really cool. But Samuel is the oldest, and at this point he's living with Eli at the tabernacle, and Eli is a priest. And Eli's sons are also priests. And in this story, Eli's sons kind of create some tension. We find out they've been sinning against God, they've been doing wrong things, they've been stealing from the tabernacle, they've been stealing from God. And so that's kind of like the background to our story. So this main part, maybe you've heard it, it's about the time that Samuel hears from God. So one night, Samuel is laying in bed, it's bedtime, lights are off, tablets are away, phones are down, parents say, hey, no talking, no chit-chatting, it's time for bed. So Samuel's laying in bed, and he hears someone start to call his name. Samuel, Samuel. And so he gets up, and he assumes, well, the only person who'd be calling my name is Eli. Maybe Eli needs something. So he goes to Eli's room. He says, oh, you called me? Did you need something? And Eli said, no, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. That wasn't me. I don't know what you heard. I don't know about you guys. Some people sleepwalk. Some people talk in their sleep. So Eli was probably like, oh, he was just having a dream. And in his dream, someone called his name. So Eli's like, okay, here, just go back to your bed. Samuel goes back to his bed. And again, someone calls his name. He hears Samuel. Samuel. And so he gets up. And this time he's like, okay, for sure, this is Eli. He definitely needs something now. So he goes back. Eli says, no, that's not me. Go back to bed. At this point, Eli is probably like, man, I'm just trying to get a good night's sleep before all the stuff I got to do tomorrow. So Samuel goes back to bed, and he hears his name called again. How many times is that? This is the third time he's hearing his name called. Samuel, Samuel. So he gets up again, and he's like, look, this has to be Eli. He must really need something this time. So he goes up, and Eli finally registers and he says, you know what? This could be the Lord trying to get your attention. So he says, go back to bed, and if you hear your name for a fourth time, just say, I am here, Lord, your servant ready to do what you need. It's the gist of it. He basically just says, I'm here, God, what do you need? So Samuel goes back to bed again, and I don't know if Samuel is thinking that he's going to wake up and be called again. Because, Eli told him, this could be the Lord trying to get your attention. If you're a kid, how often does the Lord verbally try to get people's attention? Have any of you ever really heard God's audible voice? I never have. And so Samuel's probably like, oh yeah, you're right. It's probably nothing. I'm probably just dreaming it. So again, Samuel hears someone say, Samuel. And so this time, instead of going up to get Eli, he says, I am here, Lord. What do you need? And I wonder if he feels a little silly saying that. Could you imagine you're laying in bed in dark, it's the middle of the night, someone's calling your name, and you've gotten up so many times, and you just say, I am here, God. What do you need? And God responds, and God actually shares a message with Samuel, which I think is super cool because we know at this point Samuel is young. And it's a cool story that shows that God can talk to you even if you're young. Age doesn't matter. But anyway, so the message that God gives Samuel is actually pretty important. And it's a message about Eli's family. Because remember we said, Eli had some sons of his own, and, they were sinning against God. They were stealing from God. And so this message that Samuel got from the Lord was kind of, maybe I'm sure, a little scary for him to share. Because he had to know that Eli was going to ask, what did you hear? What was God's message? Did you get called again? Did you say, I'm here? What did God tell you? And the message is really God saying, look, I see what Eli's sons have done. I see the way that they've sinned against me, the way that the nation has sinned against me, and there's going to be consequences for these actions. So prepare yourselves. That's a pretty serious message. Samuel has to go and tell Eli that because of what his sons have done, because of, how intense and how horrible and awful what his sons did was, there's going to be consequences. And so Eli eventually does talk to Samuel, and Samuel has a choice. He could tell Eli, oh, I didn't hear anything. No one called me again. I must have just made it up. But instead, Samuel decides to be honest with Eli and tell him the message God gave him. And Eli accepts it. Eli understands that his sons did wrong and that there are consequences for actions. And Samuel was honest the whole time. He shared exactly what it was. And Samuel actually goes on and grows up, and he's trusted by everyone. He's trusted because he lives on that honesty and that understanding of sharing God's messages. God actually speaks to Samuel several more times, just in different ways. And I think it's really cool because it shows that God trusted Samuel at such a young age. And Samuel followed through. He was honest. And, it'd be really cool if tonight when you guys go to bed, God speaks to you. How awesome would that be? You hear your name and God's speaking to you. That'd be so cool. It doesn't always happen like that. It's not always an audible voice. In fact, I'd say it's rarely an audible voice. Sure, God can do that. But I'd say more often than not, it's through prayer and reading the Bible. The Bible is kind of like God's message to us as well. There's meaning in it. This story from the Bible has meaning for your life. It shows that God can speak to us and that age doesn't matter. Because it kind of feels like age matters in a lot of areas of your life, right? You're too old for this. You're too young for this. When you're older, you'll understand. When you're older, you can do this. You can get this. You can be like this. Samuel was young, and God trusted him with a message of such importance. He got his attention. God spoke to him, and God can do that to you too. Age doesn't matter. God speaks to everyone. And like I said, one of the ways is prayer. So I want to encourage you, at the end of this video, pray to God. Prayer can be so many different things. It can be talking to God about your day, about your family, about what you're loving right now, what you're struggling with right now. Prayer can also be asking God questions. God, why does this happen? Why are you letting this happen? Why is this going on in my life? What can I do about this? How can I help over here? How can I be your servant, like Samuel said. God, I am here. How can you use me? Let me help you. Let me reach other people for you. Prayer is really cool, and it can be a ton of different things. And it doesn't have to be just this formal thing that you only do in church. It doesn't have to be this thing that you only do with your hands folded and your head bowed. Prayer can be anything, which is really cool, and it can happen all throughout the day. And so I'm going to end this video by praying, but I just want to encourage you guys to pray to God at some point today. Maybe pray differently than you've ever done before. Maybe talk to God like he's just in the room. Maybe talk to God like he's one of your friends and ask God how you can be of help, how you can serve him. Be like Samuel and say, God, I'm here. Use me. Let me serve you. And who knows what God's going to say. So God, I thank you for all the students who are watching this. I thank you for the students who have taken time to want to learn more about you and learn more about the Bible. And I think it's really cool when we take these Old Testament stories and we see how they can be applied to our life today. God, I pray that each one of us would be like Samuel, and that when your voice comes calling or when we feel you're stirring in our heart, God, that we would say, God, I am here. Let me serve you. How can I serve you? And so, God, I pray for all the students who are also struggling, who maybe have family who are sick or hurting, or parents who are struggling with job loss. God, I just pray that we would bring those worries and concerns to you in prayer, that we would bring that up to you because we know that nothing is too big. And so I pray that as the students go about their day today, that they would be able to pray to you, that their hearts and their ears would be open to what you have to say, God, and that it would be a great rest of the week for these students as they remember to always be listening for you. Amen. Thanks for watching, guys. I know that there are some families who are struggling right now. Life is crazy. And so if you're a grown-up or even a student watching this and you want someone to talk to or you just need some help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Bridget at the office or, anyone from Calvary. We want to help you guys. So please just let us know how we can be praying for you, how we can support you, and I will see you guys next week.